Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmates. Today, I am going to discuss the overview of the nucleus. This is JB Galpiguera, BS Ed Science 3. And this is the content of my report, where I will discuss the fundamentals about the nucleus, including the definition of the nucleus as one of the defining characteristics of eukaryotic cell, parts of nucleus, functions of nucleus, common biological reactions in the nucleus, interesting facts about nucleus, and important terms related to nucleus. The parts of the nucleus, the functions of the nucleus, and the common biological reactions in the nucleus will be discussed comprehensively by my groupmates.
Hi, I am Nucleus. Nice meeting you again. I know you know me already since high school, and I am glad of it. But before my discussants tell you more about me, I am just here to remind you that you are like me. If I am considered the most important organelle in the cell, you are the most important person in your life. Bear that on your mind. Keep doing great things. I am proud of you. Enjoy!
Okay, that is just a simple reminder for everybody. Let's now move on to our formal discussion, starting on the definition of the nucleus. The word nucleus comes from a Latin word which means kernel of a nut. If we are to look at the image of the nucleus, it resembles to a kernel of a nut. In analogy, if the nut has its balat, the nucleus has a membrane, and if the nut has laman, the nucleus has its content inside. It is a membrane-bound organelle. It has a membrane called the nuclear membrane that separates the content of the nucleus from that of the cytoplasm, and that will be more discussed later. The nucleus is singular form and the nuclei is the plural form of the word nucleus. The nucleus contains the genetic materials and proteins. Chromatins, the chromosomes, and the genes are the genetic materials that contain the genetic information that will be passed down from the parents to its offspring. The genetic information is basically the DNA contents, the blueprint of life in the nucleus containing the instructions needed for an organism to grow, to develop, to survive, and reproduce. It also contains the proteins that are, for instance, serves as the binding sites for chromatin and protein meshwork that provides structural support for its membrane. The nucleus acts as the brain of the cell. In analogy, if the computer system has its CPU, which serves as its brain, the cell has its nucleus, which is also considered its brain. The nucleus is referred to as the brain of the cell as it contains genetic information which directs the synthesis of proteins and other cellular processes such as the differentiation, the growth, metabolism, cell division, reproduction, and etc. Since it is the brain of the cell, it is now considered as the most important cell organelle. Without the nucleus, the cell will lose its control. It cannot carry out cellular reproduction. Also, the cell will not know what to do, and there would be no cell division, and gradually, the cell may die. It is commonly located at the center of the cell, surrounded by cytoplasm. If we are to look at a cell, we are able to locate the nucleus immediately, because it is at the very center of the cell. It is located at the very center of the cell so that it can efficiently carry out its functions concerning the other cell organelles. However, not all the eukaryotic cells, because there are cells in which its nucleus is located at the peripheral location. For example, the secretory cells have their nucleus situated in the basal part, and the skeletal muscle cells have their nuclei close to the plasma membrane. The nucleus is also the largest organelle in the cell. It is the largest organelle, accounting for the 10% of the cell's volume, and apparently, by comparing its size to the size of the other cell organelles, we can say that it really is. And being the largest and being at the center of the cell, it is the most obvious cell organelle. If a living cell is put under microscope, we can notice it at instant. And even just in diagrams, it is the most obvious organelle. It is as well the stiffest organelle. Because it contains nearly the entire DNA, it is very soft and flexible organelle, making them adapt to different shapes. Let's now move on to the nucleus as a defining feature of eukaryotic cell. The nucleus is found only in eukaryotic cell. So, if we are to determine a found cell, we could simply say that if it has nucleus, it is eukaryotic cell. But if it has no nucleus, it is definitely a prokaryotic cell such as bacteria. Other defining characteristics of eukaryotic cell include having membrane-bound organelles and rod-shaped mitochondria. In plant cell, the nucleus lies in its side, while in animal cell lies in the center. This is because the plant cells have many and large vacuoles, while animal cells only have smaller and fewer vacuoles. Generally, there is only one nucleus per cell, but there are also binucleated and multinucleated. Binucleated cells are cells that contain two nuclei. This type of cell is most commonly found in cancer cells and may arise from a variety of causes. Paramecium, which is a single-celled organism found in fresh water, is known to be binucleated. Meanwhile, multinucleation in cells may be due to karyokinesis, or when a cell undergoes nuclear division, or when cells fuse to form a syncytium, like in mature skeletal muscle cells. Slime mold, on the other hand, can have millions of nuclei. We also have the so-called enucleate, and it is a natural thing. The enucleation is the removing of the nucleus of a cell and replacing it with a different nucleus. This is used mainly in cloning, but this can also be used for creating hybrids of plants and animals. Some cells, such as the red blood cells, do not possess a nucleus. It is because losing the nucleus enables the red blood cells to contain more oxygen-carrying hemoglobin, thus enabling more oxygen to be transported in the blood and boosting our metabolism. So these are the diagrams or the images of the cells I have mentioned. We have the paramecium, and paramecium has two nuclei. One is micronucleus and the second one is macronucleus. And we also have the skeletal muscle cell, and the skeletal muscle cell is multinucleated, and these spots are its nuclei. And we also have the red blood cell, and red blood cell has no nucleus, this one. These are the common characteristics of the nucleus as a defining feature of eukaryotic cell. The nucleus is normally around 5 to 10 micrometers in diameter in many multicellular organisms, including the animals and humans. The smallest nuclei are approximately 1 micrometer in diameter and are found in yeast cells. Mostly, the shape of the nucleus is spherical or oblong. When a cell is histologically stained, the nucleus normally appears as a large, dark organelle, mostly at or near the center of a cell. Its counterpart in prokaryotic cell is nucleoid. The nucleoid is the undefined nuclear region containing only nucleic acids in the prokaryotic cells. It is not bounded by a nuclear membrane and lies in direct contact with the cytoplasm. Just like the nucleus, it is essential for controlling the activity of the cell and reproduction. It is where transcription and replication of the DNA takes place. Let's compare the nucleus of the eukaryotic cell and the nucleoid of the prokaryotic cell. A nucleus is a membrane-bound structure in which eukaryotes assemble their genetic materials. A nucleoid is a particular area in which prokaryotes assemble their genetic materials. A nucleus is well organized and is large. A nucleoid is poorly organized and is small. A nucleus is engirdled by a double-layer membrane known as nuclear membrane, which separates the nucleus from other organelles. A nucleoid lacks a protective membrane. A nucleus comprises several chromosomes, and nucleoid usually contains only one chromosome. A nucleus is a spherically shaped organelle, while the nucleoid is an irregularly shaped organelle. Nucleoplasm and nucleolus are present in the nucleus, while nucleoplasm and nucleolus are not found in a nucleoid. The nucleus is composed of DNA, RNA, enzymes, dissolved ions, histones, and other subnuclear bodies, while the nucleoid is composed of DNA, RNA, histones, and other proteins. And these are the images of the nucleus and the nucleoid seen under microscope. This one is the nucleus, and this one is the nucleoid. Let's now move on to the parts of the nucleus. Most of the sources tell us that in general, the nucleus has 5 parts, namely the nuclear envelope, the chromatin or the chromosomes, the nucleolus, the nuclear pores, and the nucleoplasm. In this diagram, the cisternae or the Golgi bodies are included since they are attached to the nucleus. Let's discuss fundamentals about them. Let's begin first with the nucleolus. It is a dense, membraneless structure composed of RNA and proteins located at the middle. It helps in synthesizing by transcribing and assembling ribosomal RNA subunits. It disappears when a cell undergoes division and is reformed after the completion of the cell division. Next, we have the nuclear membrane. It is also known as the nuclear envelope. It is a double-layered membrane that encloses the contents of the nucleus during most of the cell's life cycle. It contains the phospholipids and maintains the shape of the cell. During mitosis or cell division, the nuclear envelope disintegrates, but reforms as the two cells complete their formation and the chromatin begins to unravel and disperse. Next is the nuclear pores. These pores regulate the flow of molecules in and out of the nucleus. It is the communicator of the nucleus in the surrounding. We also have the so-called nucleoplasm, and it is also called karyoplasm. It is a gelatinous substance within the nuclear envelope. It is made of water with dissolved salts, enzymes, and organic molecules. It cushions and protects the content of the nucleus, and it also shapes the nucleus. Next, the chromosomes. They consist of DNA, which contains hereditary information and instructions for cell growth, development, and reproduction. When a cell is resting or not dividing, the chromosomes are organized into long entangled structures called chromatin. Let's now move on to the functions of the nucleus. And in the source that I use, the nucleus has 2 common functions. First, it contains the cell's hereditary information and controls the cell's growth, reproduction, and other cellular processes. The DNA or the deoxyribonucleic acid are concentrated inside the nucleus, and these genetic materials encoded instructions in making proteins which are used in directing cellular processes such as metabolism, growth, and reproduction. Second, it is the site of transcription, the first stage of the gene expression. In the transcription, the DNA are converted into different types of mRNA, or the messenger ribonucleic acid. Now, let's talk about the common biological reactions in the nucleus, and in here we have 2, the gene expression and the DNA replication. First, the gene expression. It is the process by which the information encoded in a gene is used to direct the assembly of a protein molecule in the process called protein synthesis. The two stages of the gene expression are transcription, where the DNA is transcribed into mRNA, and translation, where mRNA is translated into protein. Transcription specifically happens inside the nucleus. Second, the DNA replication. It is the process by which a double-stranded DNA molecule is copied to produce two identical DNA molecules. It happens in both mitosis and meiosis, and it occurs in three stages. First, the opening of the double helix and the separation of the DNA strands. Second, the priming of the template strand. And third, the assembly of the new DNA segment. Replication is an essential process because whenever a cell divides, the two new daughter cells must contain the same genetic information or DNA as the parent cell. Hence, that is how the hereditary information is passed from parents to offspring, and that helps in maintaining the integrity of the species. Now, let's discuss the important terms related to nucleus. The DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is the hereditary material in humans and almost all other organisms. The RNA, or ribonucleic acid, is a long single-stranded chain of cells that processes protein. The gene is the basic physical and functional unit of heredity. Chromosome is a long DNA molecule with part or all the genetic material of an organism. The chromatin is a substance within a chromosome consisting of DNA and proteins. We also have nucleotides, which are the chemical building blocks of DNA, and it composes of phosphate group, sugar group, and nitrogenous bases. The sugar group in DNA is the so-called deoxyribose, and in RNA is the so-called ribose. And the nitrogenous bases include adenine and guanine, which are collectively known as purine, and cytosine and thymine or uracil, which are known as pyrimidine. Lastly, the protein, which is a naturally occurring, extremely complex substance that consists of amino acid residues joined by peptide bond. And now we are on the last part of our discussion, which is the interesting facts about nucleus. The nucleus was the first of the cell organelle to be discovered by scientists. Each human cell contains around 6 feet of DNA, which is tightly packed but very organized with proteins. The nuclear envelope breaks down during cell division, but reforms after the two cells separate. Some scientists think that the nucleolus plays an important role in cell aging, and the cell nucleus was given its name by Scottish botanist Robert Brown. And that is the end of our discussion about the overview of the nucleus. But before I end my report, let us first answer a 30-second completion type of test to measure what we have learned so far. You may comment your answers on the comment section. Are you now ready? Let's do this. Time's up, and these are the correct answers. And let me read this to you as a summary of our discussion as well. The nucleus is a membrane-bound organelle that is only found in eukaryotic cells. Commonly located at the center, it serves as the brain of the cell because it comprises genetic information which directs protein synthesis and other cellular processes. It has 5 parts in general, namely nuclear envelope, nuclear pores, chromatin or chromosome, nucleolus, and nucleoplasm. The two common biological reactions that happen inside the nucleus are gene expression and DNA replication. Thus, it is the most important cell organelle. And that is the end of my report. Thank you for listening. And these are the references of my report.